We had this problem in my church once where a man who was very clearly qualified to be an elder was doing the work of an elder. Several people got upset because we didn't make him a deacon first. He hadn't been a deacon. And my comment was, why would we make him a deacon? He'd be a horrible deacon. He's not gifted for it. It's about giftedness. It's about calling. It's not an office of training. It's an office that has requirements and characteristics that need to be met to be in it.
Qualifications of a deacon are laid out by the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 3. In many respects, those qualifications are like those of an elder, except that they do not have to be apt to teach.
They're all things of character, that they would have a character that was above reproach, that they were servants. And there are natural gifts that go along with being a deacon, that you love to serve, that you love to do things for the church, for others, and especially that you would love to do them in the name of Christ.
When you're considering who should become a deacon, I think it's always important to ask who's already serving, who already has a servant's heart. Who do you see serving but not desiring any recognition? It's one thing to serve and want to make sure you got patted on the back or got the plaque on the wall, but the true servant heart is who do you see just in secret and quiet, and you didn't even realize it until someone happened to walk in and understand what they had been doing behind the scenes the entire time.
They're not only people of personal integrity, that has to be there, but they've got to be managers in their own household well, because the church is a household of God. And so they've got to be good family people in order to bring that family care and love and mercy into the household of God. Their qualifications are to be the embodiment of Jesus Christ in that regard. We're all called to that, but those who are called to leadership in the people of God need to stand out in that way, because they are the representatives of Jesus Christ.
Diaconate is made up of the installed and ordained deacons of the local congregation. The diaconate, much like the session, is called to gather regularly, to maintain minutes, to elect a chairman, and to ensure that their meetings are run decently, well, and in order. One of the things, again, that sometimes gets forgotten is that the diaconate is as much a spiritual office as the office of the elders. And so the deacons should be praying in their meetings. They should be praying for particular needs amongst the congregation, amongst the neighborhood in which the church is located. And they should be seeking ways to reach out into the local community to help those who are hungry, help those who are poor, help those who need clothes. For that is their main calling.
So they are there to make sure that everybody in the body of Christ who is in need is receiving care according to the abilities of the church to meet that particular need. So that's what we call a diaconate. It's a gathering together of the people in the church who have been given special responsibility, signified by installing them into an office in which they have been charged with carrying out the ministry of mercy to the body of Christ. The deacons are not the people who are solely responsible to take care of those who are in need. They are the people who are responsible to make sure nobody's getting left out. And so it's a work in which all the members of the body of Christ may participate. All the members of the body of Christ have this duty and obligation. The deacons give leadership and organization to it to make sure that it gets done well, and that nobody gets left out.
Generally, the diaconate is organized with a chairman and a vice chairman. The treasurer can be a deacon, but if the treasurer is not a deacon, the treasurer is a ex officio member of the diaconate. The diaconate has several functions they have to do. They prepare the budget that they then present to the session. They manage the month-to-month finances. There should be reports from the treasurer to the diaconate. The diaconate should be aware of what's going on. Again, not micromanaging, but just being aware of the financial situation of the church. The diaconate should be also engaged in shepherding. and taking care of the physical needs, especially the physical needs and mercy needs of the congregation and the community.
Like the session, the Board of Deacons is organized with one person somewhat in charge of the meeting, like a moderator of the session. We have somebody who will be the chair of the Board of Deacons. So we operate in a common way under Robert's Rules of Order, etc., just to carry out the biblical exhortation to make sure that everything is done decently and in order. But they meet regularly, as the session does, on a monthly basis. Somebody has been elected to oversee that, to organize that work. It's not an authority where everybody submits to it. It's a practical way of organizing the group together to make sure that the ministry of mercy gets accomplished in the life of that church.
The diaconate relates to the session in the context that they are a board under the session that reports back to the session, and decisions that they make in the diaconate must be approved by the session.
Session has authority over the diaconate, so the diaconate has to be willing to submit to the decisions of the session.
The diaconate is technically under the session. It is not an independent board. Anything that the diaconate does can be modified, changed, or stopped by the session. Ultimately, the session is the final stop at the local church level. That being said, the session should have a good relationship with the diaconate, and there should be trust with the diaconate to do the job that they're assigned to do, again, so that the session can do its job.
I think it's really important for the diaconate to look to the session for the vision and mission of where the church is going. It's really crucial, and I see it bringing both bodies together when the pastor is able to reiterate over and over again, what is the vision of that particular congregation, of that particular church? And when both bodies share that vision, they see how their specific different roles really work hand in hand.
They recognize that the session has to look at the whole picture on the church. The Board of Deacons has been given responsibility for one part or some parts of the work of the body, but the session has to have an eye on all that's going on. So sometimes what the Board of Deacons might believe is best for the church, the session won't support because they don't see it fitting with all the other things that need to be done and coordinated. So the Board of Deacons needs to be submissive too, because they exist in subordination to, in that regard, just like all the other members of the church. It's not a belief that elders are superior as people, but that Christ has appointed them in his place to take responsibility for this. And we have to be respectful of the position that Christ has given to these people, and be as supportive as we can in order that they might be able to fulfill what Christ has called them to be and to do.
I've heard deacons referred to as junior elders. That's not the case. The office of deacon is not where you put someone to determine whether or not he will become a great elder.
I think that's a terrible misunderstanding of that role.
I'm sure you may have heard this before, that the diaconate is the proving ground for the eldership. But the New Testament is clear that they are two different giftings, two different offices, two different callings. A man may be qualified to be an elder, but he would make a horrible deacon. And a man may be called to be a deacon, and he would not make a good elder. And so part of the work of a congregation is to recognize these different gifts and to ensure that the right men are being placed in the right office so that the church can function well and do its calling according to the plan and order of our living God.
One time I heard someone talk about what the deacons had to do. Well, all you have to do is unlock and lock the church, make sure that the grass gets mowed before Sunday, and take up the offering and help count it. And that's all that you have to do.
Probably all have heard that a deacon is someone who is responsible for taking care of the grounds, building grounds, or ushering on a Sunday, or leading with finances. So we find people who have building history or building backgrounds, etc., put them on. That's not the case either. That's part of their job, but it's not the primary role that they are to fulfill in the life of the church.
A key misunderstanding of the office of deacon is seeing it as a duty-centered role. Dealing with numbers, dealing with buildings, dealing with maintenance issues, versus seeing it as a people-centered role. Any role modeled on the life of Jesus Christ will always be people first, always be people-centered. This is who he came for. This is who he gave his life for. And that focus for the deacon is, if I do have numbers to crunch, who can I bring along with me to also equip and enable them to be involved in this? If there is a yard to be maintained, who can I bring along with me? But also having those eyes of mercy to see what are those needs. And a lot of times in our culture, especially down here in the South, we don't share needs. You don't let people know what struggles are. And only through deep relationships will deacons even be aware if some of our members actually have struggles going on that perhaps the church can come alongside them with.
They can't allow work on budgets or buildings to so obscure their vision that the ministry of mercy gets pushed off or made secondary to the office of the church. We could have a very wonderful building that was well painted, well appointed, and in other respects, a credit to the community. But if that church is not known for its love, its building is worthless in that church. In fact, the very fact that the building is exemplary, when the congregation is not exemplary in their love, would become an offense to Jesus Christ, because it presents him as if he were more concerned about buildings than people. So the chief danger is that we let the main thing become a secondary thing or entirely get lost.